Broadcasting from the Blanchardstown Centre, this is Phoenix FM.
This is 92.5 Phoenix FM, community radio for Dublin 15.
Hey everybody, it's JB Jeremy Borash, and you are listening to Darragh O'Connor.
Yo, what's going on? It's Leon Slater, and you are listening to Darragh O'Connor on the Wrestling Rewind. You get me?
I'm Tom Hannafin from TNA Wrestling. You're listening to the Wrestling Rewind.
Come to the Wrestling Rewind, the only wrestling podcast by fans who don't hate wrestling.
Hello folks, you are listening to the only wrestling podcast by fans who don't hate wrestling. Whoa, what a week it's been. And I mean that not only if you're living in Ireland at the moment where all the roads are blocked, but in wrestling, so much chaos everywhere. My name is Darragh O'Connor, and you are listening to the Wrestling Rewind, where Pat McAfee is the voice of WWE, and within days fans are more than annoyed about this, and WWE are already starting to tweet things. At the same time, Cody Rhodes is delivering promos, CM Punk has dropped a pipe bomb, ticker prices are still causing problems, TNA is making some moves behind the scenes, we have the return of Abyss and the spoopy wonderfulness in TNA, and we're going to look back in the time machine at one of the worst WrestleManias of all time. And don't worry, it's not WrestleMania 41 or perhaps 42, it is WrestleMania 9. But I'm joined on the line by Christopher Fanning. Christopher, how are you doing, sir?
We're having some Irish weather over here, but the roads are still open, though.
Well, how would you even close the roads in Texas, right? It's so big.
Well, you could, but people would be really upset.
That's for sure. I think, there's a town in Waterford. Shout out to people in Waterford. I love the city, but it really is 3 roads. And I remember saying that to someone from Waterford, and she was very upset with me. So I do apologise. Dublin is not that much bigger, but a little bit smaller than Texas. I think you could fit maybe 50 Texas into Dublin, or something crazy like that. It's wild. Okay, so Christopher, listen, we have to start with this Pat McAfee thing, right? So, look, they were building this up for weeks. We didn't know what was going on. They were kind of like, okay, Randy Orton started to hear voices again. Then he's literally hearing voices because he's on the phone with somebody. And we get the reveal that it's Pat McAfee. Now, look, I like Pat McAfee, right? I actually do. His sports commentary stuff was quite good. I don't really watch American football, but his podcast is pretty good. I really enjoyed him on WWE. I'm not someone that hates Pat McAfee. I don't really understand that. That's a weird thing for me because I'm like, oh, he's actually pretty good. But some people really do. And I definitely think making him this character was a terrible decision. This apparently was at the behest of the CEO chairman of TKO, Victor Emmanuel? No, that's king of Italy. Anyway, by the chairman of TKO, that's who this came down from. Apparently he's the representative of Pat McAfee. So this is where it all came from. Pat McAfee's supposed to be the next Sylvester Stallone, if you can believe that. But what are your thoughts on this, Christopher? Where do you stand, and how crazy is this?
It is well documented that I am not a big fan of Pat McAfee, but it's only because he's on commentary. They had face, color commentator, then face analysis, and it doesn't work. If you have two good guys commentary, it just doesn't sit right. When Pat McAfee came out as a heel, I was on board from the very beginning. I'm like, yes, I want heel Pat McAfee. I do. I want it. I got it. I'm very happy. Now, at first I was kind of bipolar. I'm like, oh, great. That's the guy I've been talking on the phone with. That's kind of lackluster. But the more I've thought about it, I think he's just the figurehead. I think there's more going on that we don't know, and we'll probably figure out in the next, 8 days, next weekend. I have a feeling that there's more to this story than what we're seeing. He's just the first person to come out. I think there's somebody else behind it. Have it be The Rock or whoever the case may be. I'm hoping it's not The Rock. But I'm just saying, in general, I'm actually on board. I want to see evil Pat McAfee. I am super on board for this.
Yeah, now, look, apparently Pat McAfee turned this down. Initially, he didn't want to do it, and he wanted other people in. And I would agree with you. I think this will probably have The Rock. That's what's going to happen. And if it wasn't before, maybe now that they have to retool the whole thing, because it seems like the WWE universe is in revolt at this. Yeah. It's such a silly move. Now, here's the thing. I don't disagree with what Pat McAfee said. Right, and it's like, apparently there was no script, but the promo was to just save the business. This comes from Yahoo Sports. Quote, I think we got off to a pretty good little start there. I think we got 20 years of history between Cody Rhodes and Randy Orton is the greatest. Randy Orton is 6'5", 200 pounds. AJ, he walks into a room, everybody goes, holy, you know what? This is what a WWE star is supposed to be. Now it's time to save the business, right? So yeah, I get it. He makes sense, and that was on a show where he was given some kind of clarity to it. So I do like that he stayed in character, and that was pretty much like the meat and potatoes of his promo on Raw, which you guys can check out yourself. And he was basically saying, hey, look, Cody Rhodes is a joke. He's ruining wrestling. They have all these vanilla midgets, which is the term which, coined by Kevin Nash, who are in there having these flippy matches that don't mean anything. I mean, that's true, right? Like, a lot of what he said is very, very true. And he's like, I want to go back to the Attitude Era. That's where he lost me. It's like, listen, the Attitude Era didn't really have good wrestling. Listeners to this show know we've gone back many times to look at the Attitude Era, and it's great to watch, just not necessarily great in the ring. So, but I do think the meat and potato of what he said is accurate. I just don't think he was the right guy to do it. Okay, here's a question, right? So you mentioned that, one of the problems you had with him, that he was a face commentator. Yeah. I think it would have been better if he had been doing comment, and look, some people have said this before, so I don't know where I heard this, but it could have been off the script where it said it or whatever, but I'm not too sure. I haven't listened to Wrestle Soup yet, and they're probably going to cover it, but here's my take on it. If I heard of it somewhere else, it's accurate, but I think it works. Pat McAfee, they do everything right? But Pat McAfee comes out as your new colour commentator. He goes, look, I worked something out with WWE. I'm now going to be the commentator for WrestleMania season. Here we go, right? Week or two, everything's fine. He's a little bit darker. He doesn't, he isn't messing around with Cole or whatever. And then slowly but surely, he starts being being a bad guy, and then eventually you get the big reveal where he is working with Randy Orton, but he gets up from commentary, maybe does an interview in the ring, smashes Cody Rhodes open, and then they both beat him up, blood everywhere, blah blah blah. That's a much more natural take. And then he could say the same promo where he's like, look, I'm so sick of watching Cody Rhodes. I left because I couldn't stand what he was doing, and I came back and it's just as bad as it's always been. That's a much more natural way to tell the story. It actually feels like it had some kind of grounding to it. Having Pat McAfee and Randy Orton is a weird pairing. To my knowledge, have they ever hung out? Have they ever interacted in that way at all?
No. I mean, what you just said actually makes a lot more sense than what we got. I mean, just the slow, and they could have started this 2 months ago where it's slowly progressing. You could have had the third guy on commentary, have it be on SmackDown or Raw. He could have been the face with Cole, and then either Barrett or Corey Graves, and then slowly progress into that heel. Because we've had 2 heel and 1 babyface on commentary before. Yeah. It worked.
That's the thing. This is exactly how they revealed Paul Heyman. Remember with the ECW invasion, and I can't believe I'm using that as inspiration, but that's what they did. They had Paul Heyman there, and he was the commentator for 6 months at that point, 5 months, 5 or 6 months, and then he revealed, I'm actually on their side the whole time. It's a much more natural way to kind of bleed into this, because we had Pat McAfee. He said he was gone with WWE, and he legitimately was, and this was a call from the head of TKO to be like, look, we need you back. They should have just given this even a month, but I suppose you're too far out. You're so close to WrestleMania. Their hands were kind of tied. I understand that, but this is why you have a plan. You don't just randomly do stuff and then hope it works out, because that's what they're doing here. It's so goofy that even though it works, it doesn't work, and people are very up in arms over it. Now, I agree. I do think there's probably going to be more to this now, where The Rock will come out, or someone big will be the payoff to be who's behind this. Because I think if they had planned this out better, it probably would have just been Pat McAfee. But because now they have to make it into something bigger, it's going to be something bigger. Now, who it is, I don't really know. The Rock makes sense. Nobody else would really make sense. I suppose you get Kevin Owens, but Kevin Owens' neck is so bad that he probably wouldn't be able to do anything. So what's the point of having a non-wrestler in there? At least Pat McAfee can do some bad kicks or whatever, but this just left a very bad taste in people's mouth. Now, here's the thing. I still do believe that Cody Rhodes is going in here as the heel, because that promo that he cut didn't win anybody over. I wasn't seeing anybody cheering the Cody promo that happened 20 minutes later. In fact, they were kind of more on it, it was very meh.
It kind of reminded me of the promo that Hogan did back in WCW with the finger poke of death, and he yelling at Vince Russo, "This is the reason why this company's going in the damn toilet." It reminded me of that, but he dropped a lot of WCW nuggets in Cody's promo, talk about Disco Inferno and everything else. And I'm like, dude, these promos are getting better and better, but it's like, okay, cool, but the story needs to be there too. The promos only do so much.
Yeah.
The story itself is just not there.
And I thought it was pretty hard to throw Disco Inferno under the bus as well.
Well, that's a fair comparison, like what he said. You find out that the third man is not Hulk Hogan, but it's Disco Inferno. I'm like, wow, that's two separate sides of the spectrum at that point, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
When it comes to careers.
Absolutely. But like, and some people did call this the finger poke of doom for WWE. I don't think it's that bad, but it definitely is bad. Like, it's not the kiss of death really, but
No.
I think the damage that it does show that Cody Rhodes is a paper tiger. And we've been saying it for ages. He's boring as dishwater and he's not a star. Like, he just doesn't move the needle, any kind of cliche you want. And when you really do kind of push back on it, you're like, yeah, he is pretty lame, you know? And it's just like, okay. But
there are people that are so engulfed in the Cody Crybaby persona that they praise him. They put him on this pedestal. And I'm like, why? When he first won the title, great, awesome, I love it. He was a fighting champion, and then when he lost it, it just became like, oh, I have to have it back, and it's like, why? Do something else, you know?
There's a good video I was watching during the week where they went through the issue with that when Cody Rhodes won the belt, and I will say that Cody has a great history of getting in his own way, right?
Mm-hmm.
He did it in AEW where he booked himself. Remember, he booked himself where he couldn't win the title ever, or couldn't go for the title ever again. And then eventually he had to leave because, you know, unless you turn heel on that, you're just not going to do it. And now he's booked himself where his whole thing was based on his dad and, you know, finishing his dad's story. And then when you finish the story, you're like, oh, okay, now what? And I think that's the biggest problem. There was never anything else to hang on to. There was never anything to really sink your teeth into. It was just done. And that's one of the biggest problems that I've had with this, and a lot of people are finally starting to attach to, where it's just like, there's nothing there. You know, it's like, I want the title. Oh, I want it back. Why? Because my dad. You're like, okay, you know.
Another thing that I've thought about too is that who's really doing creative right now? Was it WWE or is it TKO? Because
that's the real question. That's the real question.
That is the real question here, because a lot of these stories that we're getting, they're not great. They're not at the Triple H has been in the business for a very long time. And he's the one taking all the blame, and he's not even the one doing it probably. And that's probably why Road Dogg left. He's like, well, if we're not doing it, then why are we here? I don't blame Road Dogg for walking away if that's the case.
No, here's the thing. This is the third year in a row where we've had some meddling, not only from TKO, but from The Rock or from the whole corporate side. And I don't mean that from like the corporate ministry kind of thing. It's like literally the corporation going, lads, we're going to change this. We're going to add in this new wrinkle, you know? And yeah, it's just, it's unfortunate because you're just like, well, what am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to invest in something that doesn't make any sense? And I do believe that we've not only had this with Cody Rhodes, actually this is the third year in a row where Cody Rhodes has had his WrestleMania main event messed with. And look, I would say this gives a lot of credence that they don't actually really believe in Cody Rhodes. You know, he sells a lot of t-shirts, a lot of people seem to like him, but why do they have to keep messing with his WrestleMania? Obviously they don't. There's something going on here that doesn't make sense. What do you think about that?
I kind of agree with that. They've kind of lost any kind of faith they have in Cody, but I'm like, okay, that's great. But I'll go back to the whole Drew McIntyre, Cody Rhodes thing. If you're going to have Cody versus Randy Orton at WrestleMania, why put the title on Drew? Why make him a transitional champion just to throw it right back to who he took it from?
For no reason.
And I say the same thing about Sami Zayn. Sami Zayn is going to be a transitional champion too. His Trick is going to win that. That's a whole nother discussion. But why are we having Drew involved when he didn't need to be involved just because he's going to be feuding with Jacob Fatu? It makes zero sense to me.
See, at least with the Trick Williams thing, that's going to happen on the grand stage. Cody winning the belt off Drew on a random SmackDown, that's so silly. It's like there's no reason for it. Like, what they should have done there is they should have had the rematch at WrestleMania even, you know, or made it a three-way or a fatal four-way or something to tie into it. There is no long-term plan. I think what's happening here is, and look, I would say, we said this when it happened, I think Randy Orton winning the Royal Rumble wasn't a TKO call. I don't think it was a WWE creative call. It was probably a Saudi call. And they were like, okay, how can we make this fit? You realise that Randy Orton and Cody Rhodes actually isn't that very interesting of a story to have to see, because it's very boring. And they needed to spice it up. So TKO were like, right, Pat McAfee, there you go, you know. And I would say if The Rock probably had a clearer schedule, it probably would have been The Rock again. But you could be like, well, look, it's a one-time thing. It's like, no, this happened last year with Cena. It happened the year before at WrestleMania 40. Now, that worked out. But I do think, and here's a hot take for everybody, and at the time, you can go back and check it out, I was not a fan of them changing the WrestleMania main event. I do believe The Rock and Roman Reigns would have been a better call. It would have been a better draw. Would have been a better match. But look, happy the way things worked out. Obviously, being there, huge event, huge moment, blah blah blah. But the precedent that it's set is that the top brass can just change the show. They can just change it at a moment's notice, and even if it doesn't make sense, it's still going to happen that way. And that's the problem here, and that's why I think the WCW thing is apt, because when WCW was going down the hill, they were changing shows as the pyro was going off.
Yeah.
You know, like they were still changing it, as people were walking out in some cases, and you just can't have that long term. You know, you just can't have that being a thing. It's just not going to work. And it's obviously not. I mean, like, people are revolting against this. I haven't talked to... And look, again, what Pat McAfee said, I don't think was the wrong thing. I think he was spot on. That was ready-made for someone to become a tweener. You know, someone who maybe was a heel or a face, coming like, right, I'm actually sick of... You know who this would have suited really well? LA Knight.
Man. Wow.
That's who you should have given this to. You know, fair enough. Have Pat McAfee come out and beat up Cody, or, you know, get them all beat up. But have LA Knight be your guy. And look, I'm sick of it. I'm like someone from the Attitude Era. And we're around here with people who don't look good, or, you know, are small in the ring and doing the flippy stuff for no nonsense, have no characters. And he can just go to town on them. He would get cheered. He would actually get over. The problem is, at the end of the day, it's Pat McAfee. Yeah. That's why it just works.
Not only that, with LA Knight, you could throw in the whole I've been given opportunities but not been allowed to succeed.
Yeah.
If you threw that little nugget of information in there, LA Knight goes from where he's at to the stratosphere. People will cheer him. People will love him even more than they already do. I've been on the LA Knight bandwagon for 2 years now, and I'm waiting for him to break that glass ceiling already.
But that's the difference. When you have someone booking a wrestling show, you can clearly see that and go, right, who needs this? When you have a bunch of executives going, oh, I think my client is going to be like Sylvester Stallone, which is
what? No.
Same thing I've ever heard. You know, it's just not going to work, and then it just falls flat. So I do think this was probably pre-planned. This was probably something built in, but definitely wasn't for Pat. And if they do have time to change, you have time to add to it, but still, I mean, you have Pat McAfee come out costing Cody the championship and getting Randy Orton winning. 15 it's number 15. It's going to be the same.
Yeah,
I believe that's right. It's going to be tainted. It's just like, if for second year in a row you're going to have some rando in the background of, you know, modern greats winning a landmark title. Look, there's no way this can be the main event of night one. There's no way. This opens the show. It's too goofy, because you're going to have people booing, and not because Randy Orton is a great winner, a great heel, and he's won. It's because they don't want Pat McAfee. You look, it can't be the Undertaker to come out and do it, because his role now is to introduce people to the Hall of Fame. It has to be The Rock, and The Rock didn't bother his you-know-what last year, so I don't think he's going to probably bother this year.
This is a curveball that, and we haven't talked about this yet either, is that John Cena is the host for both nights of WrestleMania.
Yeah.
What if, huge curveball, that we get another heel Cena host thing where he's the voice? I don't know. I know I'm...
Why?
I'd rather it be him than Pat McAfee.
That's true. Okay, that's fair. But,
yeah.
You know, the thing about it is, though, it's like Cena is like the opposite of the Attitude Era.
Yeah.
Okay, you know, if you wanted to do this, actually, if you wanted to rebook this, and I hate rebooking things, but based on that, here's how you would do that. He's the voice. You keep everything the same way, but you've changed one word. Instead of saying, I want the Attitude Era back, I want the PG Era back.
No.
When wrestlers were... No. When wrestlers were wrestlers, you know, the rootless aggression era kind of thing.
Yeah.
That's when you could get Cena doing that, because that would actually make sense. Imagine like heel Cena being like, no, I wanted to go back to everybody not swearing and blah, blah, blah. You'd have like an ultimate heel run, which would actually be really funny. You know, but as I said, there's no creativity here. There's no logic. No. There's just nonsense. You know, okay, what do the fans like? The Attitude Era. They seem to hate Cody. They want surprise. They want the moment. And they like Pat McAfee. It's like, no, you don't put those things together. And again, I like Pat McAfee. I agree with everything he said. But man, he was not the right guy to do it. Absolutely.
No, it's like putting a round peg into a square hole. It just did not fit.
It does not fit.
I know that's a horrible analogy, but you get what I'm trying to say.
No, I think it's apt. So look, this kind of died down a bit. Internet went crazy. Roll on WWE Raw. We opened up, I think it was a cold open actually. CM Punk sitting cross-legged, much like he's done in several places at several times, to cut a pipe bomb. And it's all about Pat McAfee for the most part.
Yep.
It's all about, again, kind of going through, you know, how he doesn't like him, how, you know, the issue really is, like, how dare he call him out? How dare he, you know, he's never done anything. He's a failed NFL punter, blah, blah, blah. You know, And there were some good lines in it. There was, I don't really know why I know why he talked about Pat McAfee, because obviously, he's going to do that. But I enjoyed when he turned the pipe bomb to Roman Reigns, and he was like, "How was it? You ate dog food for a crazy old man." That was brilliant.
Yeah.
Wonderful line. And some people didn't know what that was. It's like, oh yeah, you weren't watching during the dark times.
Yeah.
the really dark times. So that was fun. I think Punk doing this promo added some heat to not only his own feud, but also this Pat McAfee thing, making it a much bigger thing than it probably needed to be. It feels like, oh man, the company they misstepped here. And apparently some people backstage were genuinely annoyed by this. There's a lot of different news going around that there is some hostility from this thing being changed. But it also lends a lot of credibility that they are still changing WrestleMania. That we don't it isn't as clear cut. And when we do our predictions next week, I don't know. I mean, Cody would probably retain, but he might not. Roman Reigns might win, but he might not. And I think that's good. I'm more into watching WrestleMania now than I was after this week, but I think it's because it has that unpredictability that is deserved for the wrong reasons. I would have much rather it had been a nice stable show with a good story instead of you guys are writing this as they're walking out. Okay. Fair enough. Before we go live, you're writing what you want to happen. To
be fair though, Vince was doing that for plenty of Raw. They were changing it up until the moment it went live.
Exactly.
So this is nothing new for WWE.
Yeah, no, absolutely. But I think with WrestleMania, they usually have a bit locked down beforehand.
You would hope anyway.
Yeah, this is one of the first times that WrestleMania seems to be very much on the fly. So we'll see what happens. It's just week to week. SmackDown is going live after we tape this. So, we'll see what happens there. But every podcast or every segment, every YouTuber has kind of weighed in on this, and they all have very interesting things to say. But I have to say, nobody. I was struggling for content this week before this happened, Christopher. I was like, oh man, it's only so many times we can say WrestleMania is not looking great, and then boom, two massive stories.
All this information. Yeah,
it is quite crazy. So WWE, thank you so much, because I was struggling to have content this week because it was it's so boring, and then you had two massive promos, two massive moments. So. Like it or not, folks, and look, we're not huge fans of it, but at the same time, it definitely got us all talking, which is kind of what you want. Some other things from Raw, really, really like Danhausen doing his curse and then accidentally cursing the referee and had to pull the curse off of it. That was great. I think Danhausen is just an absolute win for that company, beyond words.
Yeah, every time.
Even if he never wrestled, which, he doesn't have to, really, really enjoyed that whole thing. Another thing I enjoyed this week, and I have to talk about it because I am a huge TNA fan. Speaking of the spooky nonsense, right? For a long time, Christopher, I was saying that even going back to when Bray Wyatt was still alive, I was like, if Bray Wyatt leaves WWE, where he should go would be TNA. TNA has this ability to not only be a work rate company, but kind of its own thing in that sphere, not like AEW, but also kind of where weird stuff happens, if you go back and have a look, Black Rain, Suicide, Manic, sometimes, and they appeared together at the same time because they were the same character at one point, but they both magically appeared together in a tag team match. Random stuff like that just happens. The Woken Mahardy, Broken Mahardy, Willow the Wisp, that kind of thing. They've all appeared in TNA, and I really, really, for the longest time, wanted them to lean into that because I'm like, look, no one else is really doing it. WWE do it sometimes, but they don't go all the way. Bray Wyatt obviously doing it at the WrestleMania with Cena was the zenith of that, and I'm like, right, if he ever gets let go, that's where he should go. Now, obviously, he passed, and that was still, your favorite wrestler dying when he's in his 30s is still very sad. But at the same time, his legacy, I think, is one that people will only appreciate more and more. Now, why I bring it up is because I was watching Impact this week, and he had a segment with Father James Mitchell. Do you know who James Mitchell is?
I do not, actually.
So he's known as the Sinister Minister. So you probably know him from his days in different companies being the Sinister Minister. And that was his gimmick, where he's like a satanic he's like Paul Bearer. That's exactly what he's like, but instead of worshipping the Undertaker or the urn, he worships the devil. And that's kind of his gimmick, right? But he'd always bring in these big characters like Abyss and Judas Messias and, any kind of spooky character that would be on the dark side. He showed up randomly. And also there's a very, very infamous thing from NWA Samhain, the pay-per-view. Go and look that up, folks. We cannot talk about it because we're on the radio. But check out NWA Samhain and the story behind that. That's all I'll say. That's your homework. But anyway, that was the most recent thing he was done. He was off TV for ages because of what happened on that. I'll say no more. Randomly shows up on TNA this week. And I'm like, oh my God, what is Father James Mitchell doing here, right? And then we get like a Dungeon of Horrors kind of thing where he has this dark wonderland where he's, I just loved it. I just thought it was like, finally they're actually embracing the goofy side of wrestling. And then Abyss shows up. And it's the second time we've got a random Abyss cameo on a wrestling show in 2026. So I was very, very happy, Christopher. Love Abyss. So they definitely, guys, look, I know some people don't watch TNA because there's so much wrestling to watch, but you definitely should. It's like the most tight form of wrestling you can see that just goes off and tries different things. They've also announced 3 new shows. Slammiversary is in Boston, Bound for Glory is in Tampa, and they've added 2 pay-per-views this year. So that's great. Now, not only that, there is some negative news around TNA. And, I was surprised to see this. Well, not negative, but some interesting ones. So apparently there was an event where TNA talent were going to go over and work with AEW talent on the WrestleMania weekend. And this wasn't a WWE, it wasn't a WWE show, it wasn't an AEW show, it wasn't a TNA show. It was just its own thing. It was supposed to be MJF versus Nick Nemeth. Nick Nemeth, of course, is Dolph Ziggler and former TNA champion. Yeah, and it was supposed to be like an indie event. I can't remember the name of it here offhand, but Fightful Select reports that TNA star Moose has been removed from the Maple Leaf Pro Wrestling event, multiverse event, taking place during WrestleMania weekend, while TNA sources indicate that there was a scheduling conflict that prevents Moose from working the show. It was also noted that Moose had previously gained clearance to work this show as well. So there's not only that, and then we also have concern within the company that Leon Slater and Nick Nemeth were also unable to compete against AEW's Ricochet and MJF. Both were also listed as part of this multiverse event. Slater and Ricochet are currently scheduled for WrestleCon's Memorial Show next Thursday, and we don't know if that's going to keep happening. And also Nick Nemeth is scheduled for May 1st, a Creator Wrestling Monument moment. So look, we don't really know what changed. We don't really know why this happened, but they're saying it's like a scheduling conflict. Now, for people that don't know, WWE and TNA work together quite a lot, with TNA and NXT talent going back and forward, with that door being very much open. And TNA did work with AEW for quite some time, including Kenny Omega winning the TNA title and Christian Cage winning the TNA title as well while he was contracted with AEW. Christopher, what do you make of this?
This is probably why they don't do inter-promotional shows, is because there's always going to be a conflict of interest, and not just that, but you can never, whether or whatever the case may be, there may be something that may interfere, and it's easier to get your people there than your people and then somebody from, say, TNA or AEW or New Japan or whatever promotion you're having. I don't know, part of me just thinks it's just not meant to be. If stuff like this is happening, then maybe it's just not meant to happen yet. Maybe it can happen down the road. And I know AEW has, I believe it's called the Hidden Door. I think that's what it's called. Or Forbidden Door, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Forbidden Door, yeah. They have something like that where they have people from other promotions that come in. And I think that works well. You don't really need to have a whole show. You just have some of the better talent show up and go up against MJF or Kenny Omega or even Jericho if he's still wrestling, stuff like that. But I think a whole show, I think you kind of build up to that. And those of us that have been watching the older WrestleManias will tell you, kind of slowly build your program. Don't just throw all your eggs in one basket and go, darn, they broke. You kind of slowly build up to that.
Yeah, and I do think having talent going back and forward, it's a good way to do it. Like, definitely, no matter who they are, if they show up on another product, it's kind of what WWE wanted to do with the brand split, but it never really worked because it's like, well, they show up anyway. But if you have someone showing up on, AEW, it's a shock. On TNA, it's a shock. What's more, but it's not the same when they're working there because it's like, okay, they're just moving over. I think one of the coolest things that WWE did is like with TNA, where they'd have actual TNA guys come over using their own names, like the gimmick name that they use, or bringing the TNA belt with them or whatever. AEW did it as well. That's the right way to do it because it makes it feel special. It's just, look, if it is a case of WWE and like, look, don't work with them at WrestleMania main event, it is what it is. It's kind of a bit of a bummer, but at the end of the day, they're WWE and they're working with NXT, so I guess they know which side their bread is buttered, but it was a surprising thing to see. Apparently some talent backstage in TNA are upset, and it's definitely a bummer for people who bought tickets, but yeah, look, it is what it is. And I suppose this is the danger with booking these, as you said, these multiverse cards, unless all sides are approached, including WWE, not just TNA. This was probably not unexpected. Look, this isn't the first time this has happened either. Leon Slater was pulled from a TNA event because he was in the UK on SmackDown and they weren't able to use him on their own show. So like, yeah, look, I know I'm a TNA fan and it's probably colouring my perception of this, but at the same time, more eyes on the TNA product from WWE than one match in Indies with AEW. It's a simple enough equation. I feel bad for people who've bought the tickets to go see Nick Nemeth versus MJF, which would be great. But hey, MJF, you know what you should do? Go to TNA, and then you can do it there. That's what I would say. MJF, go over to TNA, and that'd be a lot better. But hey, it is what it is. But there is an AEW event this week. I think it's Wrestle Dream, and there's an MJF and Kenny Omega, and I won't be watching that. So good luck, lads. Good luck. I just have no desire to watch it, honestly.
Not sorry.
No, I like Kenny Omega. I do, but
isn't he on his last leg at this point?
He's been on his last legs for a while. I mean, yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
When I saw him at Forbidden Door, a lot of the people in that match were on the last legs or hanging on just before surgery. So it was a fun match, fun event, but at the same time, it was like, a lot of injuries were taking place there. I think this is like Kenny Omega's last run as such, where he's trying to win the belt off MJF or something, but I don't care about MJF at all in any capacity, really. So
yeah.
Look, there's a lot of wrestling to watch, and that's just not on my list. Okay, so speaking of tickets and such, there seems to be a ticket backlash now with WWE. So we've had like the initial high pricing, Christopher, right? Then the market dipped down where they gave us like a discount, and fans are still not biting.
Yep.
So what could happen here is we could have a bunch of empty seats, and it probably will. I mean, look, I was thinking myself even to go over to Vegas before work shifted, where I was like, okay, I'll go over. And even still, if I was going to Vegas, I'd only really want to go tonight too, because I have no interest in the night one main event as it is. So yeah. I don't think I'm the only one. I think there's a lot of people there that would probably be like, I just want to see the real main event with Roman Reigns and Punk. A lot of empty seats. That's what it looks like.
Yeah.
What do you think this is? Like, usually WrestleMania sells itself. This year,
yeah, I think it's a mixture of higher ticket prices and horrible storylines. If it was a decent storyline and the ticket sales were high, you might be able to sell them. If it was lower ticket sales and the storylines were mediocre, people would still go. But if you have both, people are like, nah. Like, I'll give you an example. I was in Galveston this week for 3-4 days, which is not far from Houston. Houston is where Raw was on Monday. I'm looking at tickets going, you know what? I want to go to a show, but I'm not going to pay, my firstborn child just to go to a 3-hour show. And the ticket sales, even the nosebleeds, were ridiculous. I'm like, you know what? I'll just watch it on television when I get home or when I get to the hotel.
Yeah, you had the exact same problem I had with Raw in January.
Yeah.
Would have loved to go.
I wanted to go and wish I had, the CM Punk Pipebomb alone would have been worth the price of admission, but it's just like you kind of gamble. And I love that this ties into Mania being in Vegas. Like, well, we're gambling at this point. So, oh crap, I got 00, Snake Eyes. I crapped out. I'm out. Gotta go.
Cody and Reigns won, and the match just happened. I was like, yeah.
Out there.
Yeah. No, I can see that. And, there is that problem. You would, back in the day when the house shows would be on and you'd go and it might be terrible. Like, I remember bringing a friend to it and she never went to a wrestling show before. I was like, look, come on, we'll go anyway. And she had a good time. It was a dog-do show. Real bad. But she had a good time because she never saw it before. But at the same time, I was like, well, look, I paid $30. Yeah, it was fine. But WWE still have that potential to do that on a Raw or SmackDown where it's like, yeah, it could be a good show or it could be basically a house show that should have cost $30. But no, you spent $1,000. It's just, the product is just... Yeah, I hear you. I would have liked to seen the Punk Pipebomb too. I also would have liked to have seen Punk versus Finn, but it is what it is. Speaking of Finn, it looks like we are actually going to get the Demon. They dropped.
I'm upset that they didn't keep that a secret. That I could have been okay with them keeping that from us until the actual show.
Yeah, I was going to say because it's like they didn't like drop a hint. They basically they literally dropped like photos of him at different times being the Demon.
Yeah.
So
they closed in on his eyes, and then Dom was like, "What did he mean by that?" And I'm sitting there going, "It's the Demon, dude. How dumb are you? Seriously, it's the freaking Demon." And then the match card came out like a day or two later, and it's Finn in the Demon makeup. I'm going, really? This is like the trailer for Captain America and Brave New World, where we get the Red Hulk, and I'm like, you did not need to have that in the trailer. I would have preferred being surprised by it.
To be fair,
versus seeing it in the trailer, yeah.
The only reason I went to go see that movie was for the Red Hulk, so. I will be honest with you. Like, if that wasn't in the trailer, I probably wouldn't have bothered.
It's a Marvel movie. I was going to go see it. No.
That's fair. But yeah, no, I think, my hope is when he does come out that he has a different look. You know, they have they've done something a bit different, not just something we've seen before. Because I think his NXT one where he won the belt was like the coolest one.
Yeah,
that was the coolest one. So hopefully they like the purple one that he had with Edge. That wasn't very good, but I didn't like that one at all. So yeah, we'll see.
Well, it matched the Judgment Day colors though too. So
the which
it matched the Judgment Day colors, so I guess it makes sense. But it's like, no, it's red and black. I mean, come on, it's Wolfpack colors.
Well, I don't know, when he used to paint up as like Venom and stuff, that was cool.
Yeah,
or when he went up as Carnage and stuff like that was great. I wish he would do something like that, but maybe he could dressed up as do the Punisher, because he did a cool Punisher one once before, and there's a show coming out on that. WWE, that's what you do. There you go. That's how you do your cross promotion. Get the Punisher to sponsor that match, and then get him to come out as Punisher. Why am I not on WWE Creative? Right?
I still have my Finn Balor, the Venom shirt that they sold back when he was in NXT. I still have that somewhere.
So the Finn Balor shirts are have always been great. I know it's kind of like, you know, discount Bullet Club stuff, but still very, very, very cool. Very, very cool.
I mean, the two Becky shirts that I bought for WrestleMania were on discount because they were offering like 35% off on the shirts, and I'm like, this is like 2-3 weeks ago. I'm like, oh, I need shirts for WrestleMania to help me get hyped, and I bought two Beckys, and I'm going, damn, I should have bought a Finn Balor shirt. Oops.
Never missed the opportunity. Yeah. Shirts are always worth it. Like I'm again, one of the reasons I'm even more raging that I didn't go to the one in Belfast. They had a specific Finn Balor Belfast Ireland shirt. I missed it.
I mean, I wanted to go to the John Cena farewell tour in San Antonio because they were selling, you know, the San Antonio Spurs colors. You know, it was the black and the silver, and I'm like, man, I would have loved to have had that shirt. I would never even worn it. I would have framed it. Never would have worn it.
I have Punk's shirt from when he returned with the date on it. Still in the package. I'm going to frame that eventually because I ain't wearing that shirt. That one's...
No, I wouldn't either.
Yeah, like the minute that I hit the store, I was like, bang, straight in.
Or have him autograph it and then really frame it.
Oh, that'd be difficult though. I have Punk's autograph, but yeah, trying to get him to sign stuff is notoriously difficult. So if there's a way, I will do it. But that would actually be a pretty good show. Okay, something that wasn't very good. We're going back in the time machine, and my God, I really hope the time machine broke down. It did not. Fortunately, we're going back to April 4th, 1993, Paradise, Nevada, at Caesar's Palace. It wasn't really Caesar's Palace. It was like a parking lot outside Caesar's Palace.
Yeah, it was.
So, you know, I've been to Caesar's Palace. It's pretty cool. The parking lot is not so cool, and this very much was. Look, I wanted to do this because it's been a long time since I've seen this show. I knew, look, you go back and watch the Undertaker Giant Gonzalez match because, you know, you watch the streak, or at least you did around WrestleMania season. You go back and watch them, and you're like, maybe the rest of the show wasn't that bad, and then you remember that Hogan basically gave himself the belt. And look, we'll get into that, but my God, this whole show, like, okay, I don't want to be negative, so let's go from the top. The attendance here, pretty small. WrestleMania, only 17,000, known as the world's largest toga party, WrestleMania 9. Now, I really look, I'm a Roman historian kind of thing. I love Roman stuff, so I really enjoy Caesar's Palace. I like the toga stuff. I like the intro package with all the little Roman, the Roman theming. I like the gladiators outside, and the stage was fun. I thought it had a lot of fun elements to it, right? It just didn't feel like a WrestleMania, if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
It does. And when you sent me the message in the chat that we have that WrestleMania 9, my initial response was, or my thought was, oh, man, like, no. Ooh, arguably one of the worst WrestleManias of all time.
Yeah, it's definitely.
Yeah. It took me 4 hours to watch this show. I had to pause and watch, like, no, this is horrible. Like, I had to go do something else. It was just the Undertaker match, especially. I'm just like, this is a part of the streak.
Yeah.
Why?
See,
why?
Okay, so we had this revelation a couple of years ago when we were doing the streak. So guys, if you haven't, it's in the archive. Where we went through the streak. I'll actually link it below in this channel, where the streak is brilliant in highlights, not so much in person when you're watching it. And this is like a case in point one. You know what goes against this a lot as well, and it still goes against it in modern wrestling. Like, even no matter where it is, if it's outside at all, I don't really like wrestling shows outside, like, at all. And
yeah,
like, again, I've been to a WrestleMania, I've been to a SummerSlam, and I don't like it. I think the natural light takes so much away from the product that it just looks kind of cheap, and I've never seen them been able to make it not look cheap. Like, at night time it doesn't look that bad, but this show, I think what really kills this show is it never actually goes to nighttime. The whole thing is in the middle of the day for some reason.
I think it started early too, that's why.
Like, I was going back watching it, and I'm like, you know what, okay, look, it looks a bit cheap, it looks a bit tacky, but once it gets to nighttime, it actually will be okay. No nighttime. It's just, and here's the weird thing about Vegas. Everything in Vegas, yeah, it goes on late, and they kind of get up late and stuff like that, and they start early, but they sleep during the day because the heat is so bad. Now, this was in April, so it's probably like incredibly warm there at this point, right? Why they did this? They must have had some kind of zoning laws, or they had to get out of there real quick or something, because anytime I've been in Vegas, you don't walk around at 12 o'clock, you're inside.
Mm-hmm. I've been to Vegas, yeah.
This was probably hell.
Oh, yeah.
For everybody.
Especially having a wrestling.
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Like, I don't think this was a fun experience for anybody wrestling or for anybody in attendance. Like, as I said, it's a cool gimmick. I still really like it. Like, to go back to this and have it as like a throwback would be fun, but definitely learn from it. You know, like,
I could have done without Macho Man. I love Macho Man. I love him. He's a great wrestler, but commentary is not something he's good at.
No.
So Bobby the Brain and Jim Ross would have been just fine, but you had Macho every other time. Yeah, brother. Ugh. I'm like, oh, stop.
Yeah.
I'm tired of hearing, oh, yeah, I'm so done. Go do a freaking Slim Jim commercial now. You know?
I did like the backstage presentation, though, you know, with Mean Gene having his little Roman.
Oh, yeah.
And here's the thing, that's indoors, and that looks great. That's what they should have done. I do think this should have been an indoor thing, or had like a canopy, or been at night, because it actually does work indoors. It does not work open air. So look, we've avoided this long enough. The matches, I'm just going to read the card, and then, you know, we'll kind of pick out I was going to say the good matches, but there aren't.
Are there really any, though, at this point?
We'll talk about the notable ones in a few minutes. But okay, so we start off with Tatanka defeating Shawn Michaels for the Intercontinental title. The Steiner brothers defeated the Head Shinkers in a tag team match. Doink the Clown defeated Crush. That match is horrific. Razor Ramon defeated Bob Backlund. Money Inc. defeated the Megamaniacs, which is Hulk Hogan and Brutus Barber Beefcake for the WWE Tag Team Championships. Lex Luger defeated Mr. Perfect. The Undertaker defeated Giant Gonzalez by disqualification. Yokozuna defeated Bret Hart to win the WWE title, and then Hulk Hogan, for some inexplicable reason, wins the WWE title from Yokozuna to avenge his, for some reason, friend Bret Hart. It was bad then, folks. It's worse now. It's worse now.
Mm-hmm.
So,
more what we know.
yes.
The fact that we know things that happened backstage at this show, it's like, okay, yeah, it makes sense.
So, in case you think we're lying, what happened here was Yokozuna literally gets the 1, 2, 3, right? He's celebrating in the ring with Mr. Fuji. Hulk Hogan comes out of nowhere, starts arguing with the ref, and you think, oh, he's going to get him to restart the match or have some kind of, revenge for Bret, or, you know, which is fair. No.
Yeah.
For some reason, he challenges Yokozuna for the title, takes Bret outside, hops in the ring, and gets the 1, 2, 3.
Well, to be fair, though, he did get them to restart the match. It was a different person going up against Yokozuna.
Yeah, because Bret Hart,
you want to be technical.
Yeah, Bret Hart had had like the salt in his eyes or something. So he's like, oh, you go. And it's like, it's still so silly. It's like, just get some water. Pour some water on your face and you'll be fine. But no, Yokozuna wins, and Yokozuna loses, and he loses in like, what, 20 seconds or something like that? It's crazy. Because basically what happens is Mr. Fuji sets up the salt, misses, hits Yokozuna, and then we get the clothesline and the big leg drop, and that's it.
Most devastating move in wrestling, the leg drop from Hulk Hogan.
Yep, you don't kick out from that. But even the crowd, it's funny, going back and watching this, the crowd, they're cheering, but they're not really happy, if that makes sense. They're kind of like...
they were delirious from the heat. I think they're all having heat strokes.
That makes sense.
That's what that was. Sorry, my heel commentary character is coming out right now.
No, I would believe you. I don't know why you'd put that many people in a parking lot in the daytime in Las Vegas. That's a terror. Look, folks, if you haven't been to Las Vegas, I'm Irish, so I do not do well in the heat. I can't go outside in Las Vegas during the day. I can only imagine sitting there for hours. No way.
I'm Irish as well, and when I went out there, I'm like, actually, for me, it was better because living in Texas, we have that humid heat, which is worse.
Yeah.
The dry heat, I'm like, this ain't that bad. It was actually quite comfortable. But I get what you're saying, though. It's just unbearably hot. Noon, it's like 3-digit Fahrenheit temperatures. It's like,
give you a warning. They're like, don't go outside from like 11 to 2. I don't know why they thought. Again, I still don't. I think it's cool. I think it's a cool venue. I think it's a cool idea. Do it at nighttime. But there had to be some kind, like, if someone knows, leave it in the comments below so I can look at it, because it's probably like had to be some kind of like zoning thing, or they had another event on. I don't know. definitely something weird. But okay, we cannot move away from this without talking about the Undertaker versus John Gonzalez. Now, to my knowledge, I think this is the only match that he'd have in the WWE. He might have had one or two, but I think it was just this one. No, he had two. Yeah. He had this one, and then he was introduced in the Royal Rumble. Then he had this match, and then he had another loss to the Undertaker, and then he lost to Randy Savage, and then he was with Adam. He had a feud with Adam Bomb for a while, but he'd be gone within a year. Yeah. So this is his only WrestleMania appearance. It really is one and done. It turns out he's in loads of films. He was in the Swamp Thing. He was in Baywatch for a couple of times. He was in Hercules in the Underworld. He went over to, he was in WCW for a while, in their WCW for quite some time actually. And then he went over to New Japan and War, which is actually crazy. So yeah, look, this guy wasn't good. This was not a good match. He was wearing this bodysuit, which makes him like kind of infamous because you're like, okay, you know, you definitely remember seeing John Gonzalez. But yeah, this match is like from bell to bell. It's wild that it's in the streak, and it just shows you that they weren't, like, the streak was accidental. There's no way they're like, because think about it, if you were building up this streak that will live forever, the last thing you want to have a part of it is this.
To be fair though, they weren't really, the streak matches, they weren't really starting to keep track of that till about 10 or 11. And that's when the matches started getting better and better. You know, you had CM Punk, you had Triple H, Shawn Michaels, Edge, Mick Foley. You had all these either currently in the Hall of Fame or going to be in the Hall of Fame that were going up against Undertaker for the streak. You know, we had a career versus the streak match, stuff like that. This match is so horribly bad that those that watch What Culture Wrestling, Simon Miller, I would give this a brown down. That's how bad this match is. It is horrendous.
But what's funny is when you go back and watch like recaps of the Undertaker streak, or they would be like, you know the old timey ones where the voiceover would be like, the Undertaker did this, that, whatever. When they show this match, like, the Undertaker went against the Giant, and it's just the Undertaker coming down with the, like, in the chariot with the crow. Yeah. And then that's it. So look, folks, if you were, so, you know, to wrap this up, if you were to watch this show, do not. There's no point. There's nothing to watch. You know, it's on YouTube. Flick through it, just kind of see what it looked like. Maybe watch the last couple of minutes to see how ridiculous Hulk Hogan actually was. And
they did the drama for you.
Don't be like poor Christopher, where it took him 4 attempts to watch it. So
4 hours, not 4 attempts, 4 hours. I'm like, pause, you got to walk away.
Oh, so there was so it wasn't even like 4 viewings. No. You had to just 4 hours. Man, that's so bad.
At one point, I was away from my TV so long that it reset. It went back to the main screen, and I had to go back into Netflix and watch it. Like, damn,
it's funny because it actually is on the WWE Vault YouTube channel. Yeah, it's wild. All right, folks, that's going to be it. For this week, we have hit time. Christopher, thank you so much for bearing with me watching.
Yeah, you owe me one now.
You get to pick next week, so, you know.
Oh, yay.
So you can return the favor or pick something good. But, you know, considering the fact that everyone's saying how bad this year's WrestleMania is going to be and how bad last year was, I think giving context is important. We've come a long way from Hulk Hogan and daytime Las Vegas. At least it's nighttime Las Vegas this time. They've learned something.
Yeah.
Right?
It'll be indoors too.
And it's, I mean, that makes all sense in the world. So is there anything you want to plug before we get out of here?
Sure. The Real Zodiac Productions. It's my YouTube page for both of my podcasts, The Josh Zodiac Podcast, which is all about WWE, and The Real Movie Critics, real reviews by real fans. We review old and new movies. We have Stand By Me coming up this week, and then Big Trouble in Little China coming out next week. Just give us like, subscribe, and a follow on YouTube as well as Spotify and Apple Podcasts.
Hell yeah. Fantastic. Folks, if this is your first time, do check us out over on nerdtoknowmedia.com. Go over to our YouTube channel. Please like, do, share, subscribe, and leave your comments because we can read them out and we actually know what you think about anything we've talked about. We do try to drop content at least twice a week, but there are often more than that as well, particularly coming up to WrestleMania. You'll be listening to The Wrestling Rewind, the only wrestling podcast for fans who don't hate wrestling. See you in the next one.
Thank you for listening to a Nerd to Know Media production.